Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bro, and welcome to the part 2 of my AI video series. When I made my first video, I was still a beginner at this. And since then, I got way better, gained way more knowledge, and discovered way more things than last time. I believe that I'm finally able to create a comprehensive video showcasing all the new AI technology. Another thing I didn't do in the first video is provide examples of the things I spoke about. So this video will, instead of just talking about them, actually show you all of these AI tools in action. So let's begin. The first up is, like last time, the text-based AI technology. One mistake I made in my first video was saying that these tools are usually free but that they also have premium versions with more features. However, most of these tools are not actually free and their free versions only allow limited usage, as in only a certain number of messages per day. However, most of them allow you unlimited usage of their older models. However, since this technology evolves quite rapidly, they quite significantly pale in relation to their latest models, and in comparison to them, they're actually quite bad. However, there are plenty of ways to surpass this and get more access to their latest models if one knows what to do. This is also a topic I will discuss further in this video and show ways to access latest AI models for free. One thing I want to emphasize in this video is that I am only going to use free versions of every tool, and I will showcase what one can accomplish with AI without spending a single penny. Without further ado, I already listed some of the main text-based AI tools, but since then some things have changed, so I will list them again. 1. ChatGPT OpenAI. 2. Claude by Anthropic. 3. Gemini by Google. 4. Llama by Meta. 5. Copilot by Microsoft. I am going to test and compare each one, showcasing their capabilities. I will start with the most popular one and the one most regarded as the best, ChatGPT. I have made a list of things I want each of them to achieve. So what I'll do is give each of them the same textual prompts and then we can compare their results. We'll start with the ChatGPT. One can access it from the website chatgpt.com or from their mobile app ChatGPT. I will provide links for all the tools in my video description below. The first thing I'm going to ask it is to provide me ideas for an AI-based project. We notice that ChatGPT gives quite a detailed answer on the topic, which may be either good or bad, depending on what one is looking for. Another thing we notice is that ChatGPT organizes its responses neatly and nicely into indented and numbered lists, which make it look clean. On the other side, the detailed answer and the long list may be considered a negative by some users. However, this could also be fixed by specifically instructing the tool to give short responses. However, we will move on from this in order to get to some of the more interesting prompts that I intend to ask it. Now let's move on to Claude. One can find Claude on the website claude.io on their mobile Claude app. For the sake of comparison, I will just paste exactly the same prompt into Claude. The first thing that we notice right away is that its response is not as clean looking as ChatGPT's. Even though Claude also organizes it into lists, its lack of indent make it look less neat. If you want to read everything, you can slow down or pause the video, but I will not stay on this too long in order to complete more tasks in this video. The third tool we're gonna use is the Gemini. One can find it on the website gemini.google.com or on their Gemini app. Without further ado, here is the result. Gemini is also pretty clean and neat and is more or less on the same level as a ChatGPT regarding that. There is actually quite a big similarity between their responses, and it may be difficult to tell them apart. However, when we further explore their other features, you will see a lot of things which set them apart. The next tool is LLAMA. It's supposed to be able to be accessed through the Meta AI. However, because Zuckerberg is racist, it made it unavailable in my country. Llama is also the only one of these which currently doesn't have its official mobile app. But worry not, Llama's API is public and we can access it through other means. I plan to speak on these at a later stage of the video, however, because I'll be utilizing it now. I'm going to speak about AI hosting platforms. These platforms use APIs of AI tools and enable one to access them all from one place and even compare them. This also provides one with additional usage of certain tools whose free usage is limited. For example, if I spend all of my daily usage of the ChatGPT's latest model, I can go to one of these platforms and continue using it. Keep in mind that their usage is limited in the exact same way. So I'll only get the same amount of messages as I'd on the ChatGPT website or app. My three favorite of such platforms are 1. Po.com or the Po app. 2. Character AI, character.ai or the Character AI app. 3. MyShell, app.myshell.ai or the MyShell app. Combination of these allows me to use these latest tools as much as I need. However, if I need even more, I know how to access more, which I will discuss at the end of the video. For now, I'm going to use Po for this. Choose the Llama model and paste the same prompt. The look of Llama's output was actually not bad, and one advantage to using a platform such as Po is that at the end it provides an option to compare results with the other tools, as can be observed at the end after the output. Another good thing which these platforms offer is giving prompt suggestions with further elaboration or additional information. Now let's check out our final tool, the Microsoft Copilot. It can be accessed through its website copilot.microsoft.com or their Copilot app. One downside to Copilot in comparison to the others is that it doesn't allow multiple tabs but instead just one instance of the app. So you can see here my previous chats with this tool which are all connected. All of these have given quite similar results to this prompt, with Copilot perhaps being the most concise, which could be a plus for some. This shows that for this particular task, all of these perform quite similarly, and one could use either of them, with the difference mainly in the look of the output, which is a matter of personal preference. Right now, let's move on to the second task, which is asking the tool to write an article on its own. I've chosen to ask them to write a short article on the Albanian community in Germany. However, one could have also asked it for an idea for the article. I already had one, so this wasn't necessary for me. The first thing ChatGPT did is generate two responses. And let me pick between the one I prefer. ChatGPT does that from time to time and it serves as feedback for its improvement. I chose the shorter one because I specifically indicated that I want it to be short and concise. However, both of these articles are longer than I expected, so we're about to see how will the other tools do in comparison. The article it creates is of the similar length than the shorter one from ChatGPT. One thing it indicates at the end is that it has a knowledge cutoff. That's because it's not currently accessing the internet, but instead its training data is updated periodically. Its latest update was in April 2024, which means that it doesn't have access to new internet data past that date. The Gemini's output wasn't quite short to my initial desire, however, it was still organized well and looked pleasing. It did make it somewhat concise and focused on short sentences organized in lists, providing all the elementary information. Llama's output was the least concise so far. It wrote a bunch of short paragraphs with titles. Even though it seems longer than the first two, the fact it contains titles actually helps in organizing it and looking more neat. The final one, Copilot, made the article whose size is comparable to ChatGPT and Claude. However, unlike all other, it actually provided sources. Unfortunately, its main source was Wikipedia. Out of all of them, I'd say that my favorite for this particular thing was Gemini for having the shortest sentences and a pleasant organization of its output message. However, they were all pretty close, and I couldn't say that one of them is objectively the best, but instead they're a matter of preference. Now let's test their capabilities a bit. The next task is to summarize a video. I'll be providing them with a YouTube link and they'll be summarizing the contents of that video. Gemini, being a Google product, was unsurprisingly able to access YouTube and provide us with quite a solid summary of our video. To summarize, only Gemini was able to complete our task, which surprisingly means that Gemini is pretty much leading in all tasks so far. This next task is a fun one and a short one. We'll be asking each of them to tell us a joke. ChatGPT, a cringy dad joke, but this type of humor is to be expected. And is I might give it a bit of a darker humor joke just to test its capabilities. I saw this joke before and I was wondering whether it was patched by now. Turns out it's not. Let's test this on the rest of them. As expected, the original joke it generated was the same type of dead humor ChatGPT came up with. Now let's test our new little joke with it. Just when I thought it couldn't possibly get less funny, it actually explained the joke. This one seems to also be aware of the joke, however, it makes it about the 911 emergency number rather than the 9/11 event in order to make it more light-hearted. Let's see what Gemini has for us. Let's hope it does as good as until now and doesn't disappoint us. Dad joke same as so far. The good thing is that it didn't explain the joke. Also, ChatGPT semi explained it by including the word ati in brackets. However, Gemini didn't put any explanations whatsoever, which makes it a winner again. Now, let's see what it says about the final part of the joke. Okay, now everything falls into the water. I tried to salvage it by further engaging with it. However, it didn't really work out and it ended up as a disaster. I'm sad to say that Gemini actually lost this one. Llama tried a bit more clever joke. However, when I tried the 7, 8, 9 joke, it gave a bit of a cringy response. But then I asked it the final question and it didn't know the joke. I tried engaging with it like I did with Gemini, however. Funnily enough, just when reaching the punchline, I exceeded my free message limit. I was actually curious to what its reaction would be to mentioning 9/11, whether it would just laugh it off or give me a lecture how it's inappropriate to joke with it. Anyways, we're gonna move on to the final one, Copilot. Funnily enough, Copilot got the joke and even didn't bother explaining anything. I think Copilot might be a winner of this challenge. Now, I wanted to also include some other tasks, such as writing a poem and composing a song. But I have decided to scrap some of these ideas because the video is already getting quite long. That's why we're gonna move on to the next test, and that is foreign languages. I want to see whether I can communicate with the AI in any language and also test some of its translation capabilities. I'll start by writing to them in Serbian language. I asked it about the capital of Kosovo and which countries it borders. It responded in a perfect and quite fluent Serbian. Next, I'm going to ask it to translate something more complicated, which uses unstandard words. Surprisingly, it translated the entire thing quite well. One little piece of context it missed is that even though Rhoda means garden, it's also the name of the prophet's house or grave. Let's see how the others do. Claude also wrote in correct, fluent Serbian language. However, unlike ChatGPT, it mentioned the political situation regarding the Kosovo's status. As for the other text, it also translated it correctly, but it also missed the Srauda context. Another thing both of them did is tied this to Sufi poetry when it's just a regular Islamic nasheed. Claude, though, provided a lot more context and a more in depth explanation, even providing etymology of certain words. Gemini also, unsurprisingly, responded in the correct and fluent way. However, one interesting thing about it is that the response actually seems to be in Croatian language. As for the second prompt, it was also able to translate it quite well and even explain each individual phrase. However, it still missed the fact that Rauda is referring to the prophets as Edu's grave. One thing I'm glad about is that at least Gemini didn't make any connections to Sufism. We're moving on to Llama now. Since I've used it up on Poe, I'm gonna continue using Llama on my shell. Llama's result was pretty good as well. Interesting thing about the poem one is that it translated Rhoda as paradise. Copilot was also pretty decent. Next task I have for them is to generate code. I know ChatGPT can do it because it utilizes its tool called Codec, but I'm curious about the rest of them. I'm just gonna ask them something simple for start. To generate a calculator in JavaScript, which we will then test out in our browser. Upon saving this code as an HTML file, this is the result in the browser. Its output is quite inconvenient to use. All of the keys are one below another, but it does have all of the basic functions of a calculator, so technically it completed the task. Let's see what Claude can do. Surprisingly, Claude actually done even a better job than ChatGPT. Besides making a better and more elaborate calculator, it actually opened a side panel in which it generated our code, but it even provided a preview window. So I could test the calculator without having to save the code to my computer as a textual file. All in all, it was actually quite a decent calculator. Now let's see whether Gemini has the same capabilities. Interestingly, Gemini created quite short and concise, compact code. Another thing which only Gemini did so far is that it separated HTML and JavaScript. Unique thing it did is that it provided sources and footnotes and explanations, which seems to be the best so far. Gemini so far seems to be the winner, but we cannot say anything until we actually test this code and open a new calculator inside our browser. The funny thing is that Gemini actually didn't include any buttons, but instead one has to use the keyboard for the input. Upon further inspection, it appears that the calculator is broken because there is no output anywhere. That's a shame. Let's move on to Llama. I wonder whether the fact I'm running it through a platform will impact its code generating capabilities. Upon first inspection, it appeared that there was a problem with displaying the code. However, when I copied the message, it turned out that the code is complete. It's just that there is some problem with its display colors, which is most likely a problem with my shell and not Llama itself. The code seems fine, but let's see what happens once we run it in our browser. Surprisingly, this seems to be one of the best ones. Yes, the keys are distributed a bit strangely, and there seem to be some issues with its dimensions. However, it looks way more decent than the one generated by ChatGPT. Time to test the last one, Copilot. Now let's test it in the browser. Funnily enough, this one made all the keys in one vertical line. At least it works and doesn't seem to have any errors. It looks and works as intended. Based on this particular task, I ranked them as such: 1. Claude 2, Copilot 3, Llama 4, ChatGPT 5, Gemini. The next task I got for them is to generate an image. Now, I know I'm planning to dedicate an entire separate video on this topic of image generation. However, I also want to test whether these text based AI tools also have image generating tools integrated. I already know that ChatGPT has it because in its latest model, it integrated Tally in it, which is an image generating AI tool also developed by OpenAI, but I'm curious about the rest of them. I'm going to ask ChatGPT to generate me an image of a character from my anime. However, my first prompt will ask him for a photorealistic version, and the second one will be anime style. It generated an image even though it seemed a bit stylized and not entirely photorealistic. It reminded me of a character from a PlayStation game. Unfortunately, with this message, I hit the ChatGPT's free limit, so I was only able to generate one image. Interestingly enough, ChatGPT in my shell wasn't able to generate images, but I remembered that the tool ChatGPT uses to generate images is DALL-E, so I decided to directly generate the image using it. DALL-E is fully integrated with ChatGPT, however, it also has its API public, so one can also access it through AI hosting platforms. I've decided to use a website which has free DALL-E on it using the DALL-E API, and its address is dalfree.ai. However, it turns out that even this website is not free because it allows you only 2 generations with the free plan, but there is almost countless such websites. Not to mention, one can register with multiple accounts. So it's sort of like a life hack. Anyways, here's the result I got. I was actually pleasantly surprised with this. Even though the website seemed a bit sketchy at first, it turns out that it indeed uses the DALI API, which I'm glad about. Now let's move on to Claude. Unfortunately, it seems to only be able to generate simple vector graphics and nothing more complex than that. However, it at least provides alternative tool suggestions which can get my task done, which is a big plus for it. Moving on, Gemini, on the other hand, seems to actually have image generating capabilities integrated. Gemini uses a tool called Imagen, also developed by Google. However, when I attempted to generate my image, it informed me that generating images humans is only available with the premium version, which is a bummer. Moving on to Llama and hoping it delivers us with at least something. As expected, even though Myshell has image generation capabilities, it actually separates text based and image based models, and one can't use both within one model. Now, none of this would have been a problem if Zuckerberg wasn't a racist and if he allowed the usage of Meta.ai in my country. Meta.ai actually has image generation integrated. Because I was unfortunate enough to be born in a third world country, and because I'm not planning to pay any money for any of these, we'll have to move on to our final hope. Microsoft Copilot, if my memory serves me well, it actually had quite decent image generation capabilities. Copilot actually integrates a tool known as Designer, which is the Microsoft's image generating tool. Same prompt, same everything. As expected, the image is quite decent. As for the second prompt, the result was also quite decent. However, upon further inspection, his belt looked a bit messed up. His hair wasn't as short as indicated, and he didn't have a beard, so I'd say ChatGPT wins this one. So, all in all, out of all 5 of our text based AI, only 2 had working image generating capabilities integrated. At the end of the video, I'll give each tool points and we'll see which one of these is the best tool objectively. Now, let's move on to our final task, describing an image. I've decided just to use this image, which was the first image generated by ChatGPT. Let's see what ChatGPT has to say about it and whether it even has access to the images I sent to it. ChatGPT, as expected, delivers on the task. Claude actually delivers a more detailed prompt. Not only that, Gemini doesn't want to generate images of people, it seems to not want to have anything to do with them. This seems to make it the loser of this round. However, when I tried Llama, it didn't support image upload. So it seems I spoke too soon for Gemini being the loser of this round. Finally, we get to Copilot, which actually surprised me quite a bit during the course of this video. Let's see what it has for us. Copilot has delivered, however, the first thing we notice is that it censored the face, probably due to some kind of a policy it has. It also generates a decent description of the image. Now that we have completed all of my planned tasks, I'd like to show you one last thing which is very useful for the people who use AI. The website fipcamchuoya.net, which contains a comprehensive database of AI tools, which can also be helpful for finding free alternatives to certain tools one wants to use, and more platforms which host specific tools. Keep in mind that this list is far from containing all tools since they are so numerous, and you'll find a lot of quite popular tools entirely missing from the list. Now that we've got this out of the way, I believe now is the time to rank all the tools and proclaim our winner. I would be giving each a score from 1 to 5. As for the first task, they all performed well, but I believe that all of them were slightly more clean and neat than Claude, so I'll be giving each 5 points while Claude will be getting 4. As for the second task, they all performed it successfully, so they'll all get a decent score. However, I like the conciseness of Gemini the most, so that'll be our only 5. Copilot included footnotes, so I'll give it a 4 just for that, and the rest of them will get a 3. They all failed the third task except for Gemini, so that'll be the only 5. However, Llama was at least allegedly able to at least access titles and descriptions, so it'll get 2 points for that. And Copilot, even though he wasn't able to complete the task, gave us suggestions for alternative tools which we can use, so we'll give it a point for that as well. The rest of them receive a 1. All of them delivered on the fourth task, so they should all get high scores. However, Gmini and Llama didn't get my stupid 9-11 joke, so they get one reduced point. As for the fifth task, they all delivered a decent result. However, I'll deduct 1 point to ChatGPT and Claude for mentioning Sufis. As for our little calculator, only Claude gets a 5 because its calculator was magnificent. I'll give Copilot 4 even though it didn't look very good, it was clean. I wanted to give it a 3, however, I'm also giving Llama a 3, and I don't think they're on the same level because Llama's 1 is really messed up and not clean at all. ChatGPT gets a 2 even though his calculator is awful, at least it's functional, and Gemini gets a 1 without any further explanation needed. Coming to image generation, the only ones which actually delivered were the ChatGPT and Copilot, and they both get a 5. Even though ChatGPT put me through some trouble because I'm using the free version. Llama gets a 1 because Zuckerberg is racist, and that's the reason why I'm giving Claude and Gemini a 2. Another reason is that Gemini technically can generate images, just not of living beings, and Claude can generate basic SVGs. Llama can do nothing, thanks to Mr. Zuckerface out here. As for our final task, which was describing an image, I'll give 5 points to Claude because its description was the most detailed. ChatGPT and Copilot get 4 points but still decent. And once again, Mr. Zuckerberg gets 1 point, so I'll give Gemini 2 points, even though it didn't deliver the task, but technically it can as long as there aren't any humans. Which makes our final score. ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini all have the same average of 3.625, and they all share the second spot. Llama has the lowest score of 3, while our surprising winner is Copilot with the score of 4.25. I actually expected ChatGPT to win, however, we had a pretty surprising turn of events. I hope you liked my video, and once again I'll try making him do the outro in Albanian. I could actually make it sound decent by finding a decent model. However, I'll just stick to the model I used so far, and let's see whether it's gonna be a win or a fail. Percentage presod se ju ka pelkier video ja e vogel ke kam pergatitur par ju de kalofshitni titete buker. Esselamu alaikum ve rahmetullahi ve barakatuh.